get cash, cause your body can't afford it. Don't you know who I am? You better give a damn. I'm with the band, man. Bask in my glory and tell me a story of how great you think I
Hey, this is Eric, and I'm with the band, man. Sorry, everyone. I am flying solo tonight. I don't know if you were aware or not, but there is a marble racing sport, and Dan is one of the world champions. So I think he's in Luxembourg right now at the World Championship. So good luck, Dan. Let's hope you bring back the gold for good old USA. Yeah, so I am super excited tonight. This is going to be our episode with Nicky Fantazzi, Philadelphia man, who has been in quite a few different bands. We primarily in this episode are going to discuss his time in Prema, Christ, and Memorial Day. Uh, Super great guy, super fun, had all kinds of great, crazy stories. Um, yeah, just kind of a blast to talk to. Um, he had some really unique opinions on lyrics and their place in music, his approach to playing guitar, writing guitar, what he brought to his bands, kind of being thrown in the deep end when he joined Prema and what that meant for him as far as touring and everything like that. It was nice. It was a good throwback to talk about his friendship with Rennie. Way back, our one of our earlier interviews. So kind of bringing in the friend of the show, Rennie, and Starkweather connection, and yeah, it was a very good talk. Um, I think the big thing that I took away from that episode, without getting into too much of spoilers, is how music wasn't really a priority. It wasn't really that important to Nicky until he heard the right music. And I think I'm a little similar with that. Music was always in the background. I've always been surrounded by music. My dad and mom both always playing music. Um, but music didn't become the thing that it became for me until I got into, punk, hardcore, indie rock, the whole underground thing of music is kind of when my priorities rearranged and music became such a big priority. And Nicky's story is similar enough with that, which is it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, like I said, he had some great stories. Spent some time in three amazing bands. The Memorial Day story is kind of a little sad. All the I don't want to spoil it too much, but they put a lot of effort in, and then kind of what ended up happening less than ideal. Although glad that they were able to pull it off and at least leave some kind of time capsule and some kind of evidence, musical evidence, which was great. His time in Christ was amazing. Uh, Such a great band. Prema, I had never had the privilege of listening to before this conversation. So again, another great band to add to my never-ending and growing playlist. Trying to capture all of the great music in the world into one playlist that I'll bring with me everywhere I go. So yeah, that was the episode of with Nicky. Super glad that I got him on the show. Once we got Rennie on here, I've been trying to get Nikki on, and just with Dan and I kind of being a two-man show and having to do all of the scheduling and arranging the schedules and everything like that. It took us a little bit for the stars to align and us to get him on, but I'm so glad that we did. Amazing guy, super nice, super relatable. Uh, approachable, funny, all that. So it was a great conversation. Like I always say, I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as enjoyed being a part of it. It was amazing. So yeah, check it out. Nicholas Fantazzi of Prema, Christ, and Memorial Day. Enjoy.
Story of a boy, not the fight for, just to admit my own, and help me carry on, help me carry on. Story of a man, such big plans, too much time to waste, but not enough to lose, not enough to lose. Story about you, used to help me find myself. Cause it scares me to death when I look at myself and see the little Schaffer who's inside of me. Story of a promise that I can't keep. 6 months seems like an eternity. Story of a cry, too loud for words. The tears hold enough pain to make me understand. Story of a lie, used to help me find myself. Cause it scares me to death when I look at myself and see the little Schaffer inside of me. Travel deeper, travel deeper, travel deeper. Wow! You've given me to hell and back, just go. With you I don't know what I want. You've given me the happiest days I've known. Travel on with your unseen friend. I can't explain because I don't understand. Really, we could become good friends. Could it work, or should it remain as is? Could it work, or should it remain as is? Here and now, Schaffer, travel on with your unseen friend. Here and now, Schaffer, travel on. 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 Travel on. Ah, travel on. It's a happy song. Here and now, Schaffer, travel on. Ah, here and now, Schaffer, travel on. Travel on. Happy song.
Oh, I am very, very excited to be able to introduce Nick Fantazzi of Prema, Memorial Day, Christ, and a few other bands we're going to be talking about. So, Nick, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thanks you for having me.
Beautiful. So yeah, this has been kind of a long time coming. Christ was always one of those bands Obviously, I know you and I were talking a little bit before we hit record. You've known Rennie for pretty much your entire life. I've known him for 20, almost 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
But not like in person, just as
Right.
pen pals, which was
Okay.
pretty interesting.
He has the best handwriting, right?
Oh, he is amazing handwriting. I still have a collection of all of his letters because
Hmm.
yeah,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't expect from a construction worker, but world is an interesting place.
Well,
So I remember it was one of at some point he had mentioned you. I think I'm sure we'll get into the story of the talk that you were. I don't know if you were like the tour guy or the booking agent or
I went everywhere with them. Oh my God. I like did everywhere. That was kind of my, like before that I played in some bands in high school and we played shows, like this we always got thrown on like some crazy metal shows, which was great being like in high school and going and playing like with a bunch of bigger metal bands, like at the crazy little metal club across the river that they wound up burning down. But I went everywhere with with those guys. I went like with Starkweather. I just went everywhere with them, and helped them with everything, filmed everything, set up, sold the merch, did all that, and I was the guy that just went everywhere. That was my introduction to really like going around with bands.
or since you did filming for them, are you responsible for that terrible VHS bootleg that was released?
I don't know. I don't know about that, but maybe that I filmed. Maybe I filmed it. I don't know what shows are on it.
I have no idea. It was, I remember, I mean, it was like 30 years ago, but it was all grainy and it definitely was not a soundboard, but it was
Oh,
called like
probably. I probably filmed it. Yeah.
called
Yeah.
like Blood Oath, Never to Play
Oh, I
Live
don't
Again or
know.
something like that. So,
I definitely didn't. I definitely never released anything, but that doesn't mean somebody didn't get shows
of
that we
course.
filmed.
But yeah, he was, he had mentioned you and mentioned Christ, and then, way back in the day before the internet and all that, you would look through distro catalogs, and I saw that you guys had I guess, full length and EP or two EPs. I guess it depends on how we're breaking down only every other day. But I ordered both of those, and I was like, wow, like these guys are really unique. These guys are really interesting. And unfortunately, I'm 0 for 2 now. Most of the bands that I've had on here are bands that I've seen live and
Right.
experience their live show. But I'm 0 for 2 for Philly bands. So you and Starkweather, I have
That
never got the opportunity to see. So
that's because they don't play. Um, and they don't Stockwell doesn't play, which was a shame. And we were very short lived. We were real short lived. Christ kind of was over as it was beginning. So it was there was a couple little tours and a bunch of shows and the two records, and I feel like in that Dan Gross wrote something really nice that came with the record about like Christ living a short life and Christ living a short life. It was definitely funny. We were both like, I was like, wow, you couldn't have said it any better. Because in that year span, we did a lot, but it only lasted about a year from start to finish. So,
well, I think that's the perfect segue to kind of kick us off. Let me know kind of what got you into music in general, what you got you into more, underground music, how'd you pick up the guitar, all that stuff. The
okay.
formative years.
Wow. So I never really in the beginning I didn't really listen to like much music. Like my dad owned a bar and I'd hear what was on the jukebox. And it was a typical Philadelphia like mob Italian bar. So you'd hear like this is when I'm really little. This is like early 80s. So you'd hear shit like I don't know, just pick like weird disco songs and then like I was made for loving you, and then like some Billy Joel and Rock the Casbah was a big one in the bar on a Saturday afternoon. Don't ask why they got into that, but that was a big one. I don't know. So that was like that, and then like probably like around 10 years old, and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons at a friend of mine who lives right up the street. The house is right up the street from the house that I live in now, and we're in his brother's bedroom playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he goes, "Yo, you want to listen to some music?" Yeah, sure. And he digs through a box. We dig through a box of tapes, and there was an Ozzy tape. I was just like, this guy's supposed to be crazy. We put it in, and that was it. I was like, wow, yeah, this is kind of what I guess I've been waiting for. So, sorry, apologies for their beeps. So, that that was it. That was like the beginning of it, you know. And then I don't know. From there, it just kind of like I came home and I told my mom I wanted to go over to Mel's, which was the record store 2 doors down from my dad's bar, and I bought the Ozzy records, Diamond Man and Blizzard of Oz. Those were the ones that were basically out at the time. And then from there, it just grew. You know, from there it was like, you know, I don't know. I just looked for stuff that looked similar. You know, you'd get burned sometimes. You buy a record that had a cool cover, but yeah, you know, like I mean, I'm trying to think back to that. But when did it start progressing into like heavier shit? Well, that was probably when I heard Metallica, which was right when Ride the Lightning came out. You know, Ride the Lightning comes out, and there's this syndicated. I don't think it was syndicated. It was just a Saturday night show. Maybe it was syndicated, called the Mighty Metal Shop, and that was on in Philly radio. And that was the first time I heard Metallica. It just come out, and they played For Whom the Bell Tolls, and I kind of was like, "What the fuck is this?" You know. And then from there, it just went heavier, and then you know, Anthrax and SOD, and then I started getting into stuff like that. And that's the crazy one. So, my cousin goes to rehab, and she comes home with a boy, and he's like, "Oh, you like SOD? Well, no, you need to hear this shit." And he gave me all these tapes, like Crumb Suckers and Agnostic Front, and stuff like that. You know, I was probably like 86ish or so, you know, and then that's when that kind of started, you know, and then from there it's just like, you know, but I was always just looking for something like new, like I didn't want to hear like, and that's probably why I didn't listen to much music until I actually started finding it on my own. Like my mom just played the Beatles, you know, like my mom liked the Beatles and shit like that, and that was on. I'd hear that in the house, or like, you know, like Motown stuff in the house and things like that, you know, or like just classic rock shit, you know, and I have no whatever. People think I'm lying or think it's funny when I'm like, dude, okay, so I owned a record store and I sell records for a living, but I personally never owned a Led Zeppelin record. Have I owned them? Sure, because like I sell them. So yeah, I've owned thousands of them, but have I ever owned one? Have I ever like physically bought one to listen to? No, never, you know? So it's like never Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. I just didn't get into classic rock, you know, like it's stuff that was prior. I was always kind of like, now I'm kind of like, God, I should have checked out some, you know, because you'll hear like some of like the proto bands and shit. And you're like, damn, that's killer. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, fuck, you know, somebody will be like, yo, you know this? And you'll be like, you know, like later, like even like Thin Lizzy. Like, I didn't even want to hear Thin Lizzy. And then later on in life, they became one of my favorite bands. When I was a kid, I was just like, fuck is that? I don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? I want to hear something else. You know, they're done. I can't go see them. They're not going to play. You know, they're not going to play the club down the street or the arena that way. There's a club 1 mile that way and arena 1 mile that way. They ain't coming on tour. Why the fuck don't I listen to them? You know? So it was like kind of like that. So it's always whatever. And then I guess around like, I don't know, 88, 89 is when I like really got into like tons of like New York hardcore type stuff, you know, like, you know, like the Youth of Today's and stuff like that, and the Gorilla Biscuits and all that. And then also at the same time, like the Jane's Addictions and things like that, you know, like I mentioned high school bands and stuff like that. The girl that used to get us on shows and stuff, she like gave me a Jane's Addiction tape. It was like, she was older. You know, she was like, you're going to love this. And I was like, all right. And put it in. Yeah, fuck, I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, so like that was right when Nothing Shocking came out. So it kind of just spiraled from there, you know? And now I don't want to say I listen to the same stuff, but I just listen to the same styles and stuff, you know, you know, it just kind of, I don't know, progressed from there. I still look for new stuff all the time. Well, I don't know. A lot of it is just whatever.
I love your story. I think you're the first person. Almost everybody has their story about music, and it almost always involves finding new music while skateboarding. You're the first person to tell me you found it while playing D&D. So that's amazing.
Okay, so Philadelphia, like I never rode a skateboard in my life. Like there's not much, like I guess Philadelphia later, like skateboard. I was more like a BMX kid, but I don't know, we didn't really like put our headphones on. But also like once I heard Ozzy, like it wasn't like basically like within like 6 months I was like super into Ozzy and like Motley Crue and stuff like that. And so was my buddy Jude. It was, I guess, like my first friend, you know, like we met we met in like preschool with like superhero dolls. You know, if you notice superhero like the Mego figures and the clothes, like yeah, we each, I guess to comfort us, we took one of those with us to school the first day. And I kind of like, got the lizard, I got Spider-Man, you know? And so he got a bass for Christmas when we were in like 7th grade, and I got a guitar, and we wanted to be Motley Crue, you know? And then by the time we play our first show, like at 15, like 3 or 4 years later, like fuck Motley Crue. We wanted to be like, you know, a DRI or something, you know what I mean? Or like fucking Crumbsuckers or I don't know, Leeway or something, you know, we didn't want to be like, you know, so yeah, but no, there wasn't much skateboarding going on around me. Maybe now there is, but it back in the like 80s, not everyone, at least I, not that I noticed, you know, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of the same way. The area that I grew up in, it was fairly rural, so unless you were skateboarding in like a cornfield or something, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities to skate. And until I was in late high school, that's when the idea of at least the Indiana, Chicago suburbs where we actually started building like dedicated skate parks.
Right.
And then especially like that period, at least around me in the mid 90s is when they would have the like the battles between the skateboarders and the rollerbladers and then the
Okay.
BMXers too. Like, no, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
our
yeah.
park. No, this is our park. And okay, man. So
We so we're in the city, which is all like row homes, you know. So there's nowhere like you can't really build up ramp anywhere. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like so. I guess that's one thing that like maybe deterred them. And I know like later on, obviously with like Love Park and stuff, they just like street skate, but there wasn't a whole lot of that in the '80s. That didn't pop up around here until like I'd say later. Once I started going to like hardcore shows and shit, a lot of the kids like that were from the suburbs and stuff were more where they had more land. They had land to build like ramps and stuff. Hey, Yodi. And they would, they all skated, but there was nowhere to really skate around here, So I don't think now I think it's a bigger inner city thing. I see tons of kids are skating, but like there wasn't a lot of it when I was younger.
Cool. So
Yeah, D&D is what got me into music.
I like that. That's a cool story. I mean,
Yeah,
it's unique.
And my buddy whose house we're in, pretty much him too, and like he did more like metal bands and stuff, But like it got us all. That definitely got me and him totally into music, and like it definitely started a path for us, that they and I vividly remember it like, yeah, this dude's supposed to be fucking nuts. And I don't know what I was expecting to hear, because I had seen like ads in the paper and I saw like the cover of like Diary of a Madman, and I don't know like what I was expecting it to sound like. But when I heard it, I don't think it was what I was expecting it to sound like, but it was everything that I think I was kind of looking for. The same thing holds true when you hear like, I don't know, when you hear all this talk of like, when you hear about like death metal or something, or just you would hear the term death metal, or this metal or that metal. And like when you finally hear like something like death, like when Scream Bloody Gore finally comes out, and you're like, whoa, yeah, I guess this is it. This is what death metal sounds like. You know what I mean? Because with no internet and stuff, I mean, I would save up. My mom, my dad wasn't really around much, like just because he was like, had the bars and stuff like that. And my mom, I don't know, she worked at the bank, so she would just send for lunch. We didn't come home for lunch from school. Like here at school, you'd go like 8 to noon, go home for lunch, or go get lunch at the luncheonette or something, and you go back to school from like 1 to 3. That was like grade school. So she would just give me money every day, and I'd go buy lunch, and I'd just save up whatever I didn't spend, and I'd go to a record store like on a Friday, or sometimes cut school. Like my mom was fucking crazy. She'd be like, I'd be like, yo, ma, like the Master of Puppets came out, the new Metallica record comes out today. I'm not going to go back to school after lunch. I'm just going to go buy it. She was like, yeah, whatever. She didn't give a fuck, which she was crazy. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but she definitely was very supportive of me on my musical journey, And like I said, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Like you're letting your kid cut school to go buy fucking Ozzy records, and Metallica records, and Slayer records. And, when he's like 11 years old and 12 years old, like that's more important to him, and to you than him going back to school, which it's like they're just going to fill your head with bullshit anyway. So I'd rather fill it with, I would have rather did better filling it with Metallica and Ozzy when I was 11. So
Yeah, it seems like it worked out for you.
yeah,
So seventh grade, you said you get your guitar. What was
yeah.
the because I know you were saying that you were kind of gravitating towards that New York hardcore.
Mhm.
Was there like a thriving local scene in Philadelphia, or did you kind
Um,
of
not so much like in Philadelphia, like there, like it was more like what, like a hardcore scene or something.
yeah,
No, but there was places that had like hardcore shows, like Pizzazz and stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of hardcore bands. Like at least not that your cat, my cat's sitting right there. And he's like waiting for me to like hold him or something. But he's just like chilling. So yeah, I love it. Such a cat person. Um, was there a try? No, there was some bands like Pagan Babies and stuff like that, but a lot of the bands like Ruin. Philly was weird. There's a lot of the weird bands come from Philly. Like we didn't have the like sheer terrors and agnostic fronts. We had the Ruins and the Wide Eyes. I mean, we had like the misfit bands. You know what I mean? And by misfits, I don't mean the guys from New Jersey. I mean like the bands from Philly were all like Philly's a weird place. Like yeah, but we also had like a ton of hair metal bands too. Like we had, like I don't know if people even realize this, but the club that was on the Boulevard, Roosevelt Boulevard, the Empire, they had all ages shows every weekend, and some weekends you'd get Venom or like Flotsam and Jetsam, like depending on who's on tour, and other weekends you'd get like Danger Danger, but every Sunday they did an all ages show, and no matter what, the parking lot was full of just people hanging. And it was literally like probably like the equivalent, probably not the equivalent of Hollywood Boulevard or whatever, but the Philadelphia version of it, where there's 1,000 kids in the parking lot just hanging out, handing out flyers and shit for their bands. And there was that. That was a little weird. But hardcore shows at Pizzazz, those were happening. But as far as bands, I don't know. Really wasn't a whole lot of bands. Like even if you go back and look, it's like, Pagan Babies, there's Wide Eye. I don't know. There's a lot that just really wasn't. Philly didn't come around till like later. I feel like I feel like Philly hit in the '90s, the mid '90s. Philly, like with Ink and Dagger and Prema and stuff. I feel like that's when Philly started like getting known.
yeah, definitely.
Having bands, but up until then, it was just like, and even then, like those the sounds are weird. Like Philly has a weird. It's like Starkweather. Like. I mean, Starkweather to me is like one of the most important, innovative bands in the genre, but like look at if you talk to Rennie, they wouldn't even play Philly, they'd go play Boston or New York or something, like it just was like, one of those things, there really wasn't much happening. There was like in the early '90s, this guy Joey was booking shows at Dobbs trying to do it. I mean, he was bringing all the bands in. He was bringing in the Sheer Terrors and the Killing Times, and and Starkweather and Hard Response were playing on the bottoms of most of them, and it would just be the same. There'd be 50 people at the show. So it's like Philly was. I don't know. Philly was a weird place. But we had Trenton, right? We had City Gardens, literally like 40 minutes away, and that was like the mecca. That was like that had everything. That was like the best place because it was in between Philly and New Jersey. And they would just put shows together, like if there was, Randy he was great at what he did booking. He would just kind of throw bands, I'm sure you've heard about, right? About City Gardens a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like they did the book and the movie and stuff, but like that, that that was great. Which I never read the book, but I know it doesn't touch a lot on like the hardcore. But there were so many good hardcore shows there, So, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like Philly was definitely. Our band situation was lacking, I mean, but we had Starkweather, that's the thing. But that was that, and they were just on another planet, man. Nobody sounded like them.
No, I mean even
no one was like them,
I mean, even to this day, I don't think I've ever heard a band that sounds like that. I mean, I've heard bands that definitely have been influenced by them and maybe even imitating them, but not at that level. So
yeah, no, I know. Like, and when they were like I was there for all of that, So when they were like busting out newer songs, and it just kept progressing and progressing and progressing, and just like it's insane. Like every time it's like, man, you outdid yourself with this one, you know? And it was painful to be friends with those guys because how the fuck do you make a mediocre band at that point? How do you just make a band? You know, you can't just make a band. You know, when like Rennie and Todd, when Rennie and Todd are going to hear it, you can't just be like, oh, here's my band, and it just be like, some just generic sounding band. You'd be like, oh, fuck out of here. I hope Rennie and Todd never hear this. I'd have to hide my face.
So you said you were starting off, originally influenced by Motley Crue, hair metal, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like Yngwie Malmsteen. Like I ran scales all day. Like I hid in my bedroom and ran scales, and then one day, like, I don't know, I started hearing like hardcore. So then I I used to just sit there and run scales, and then I like start hearing hardcore and I'm like, oh, and I start playing a little differently, and then I hear stuff like Jane's Addiction and The Cure and things like that. And then I'm like, oh man, there's this whole thing called songwriting and structuring, like there's, fuck guitar soloing, anybody, so it's like, so that kind of like, it was an interesting little path, like it went from like I said, just trying to like, I guess, learn how to play the guitar at first, you know what I mean? And at the time and place, it was like, yeah, I fucking loved Randy Rhoads, but then like, and Yngwie Malmsteen and shit like that. So I'm trying to do stuff like that. But then a big one for me was the Joshua Tree. Like when I heard Joshua Tree, I never really paid much attention to U2, but I like, you couldn't not hear that. And I remember like hearing like With or Without You on the radio so much, and like the little like feedback noises and shit. I'm like, oh, what's that? Like what are these? Like how the fuck? So like that was a big record for me, just like learning like textures and soundscapes and shit. So, and I guess that's what like took me on the path to find stuff like The Cure and the Smiths and stuff like that, and that's, which is why the girl Annie was like, yo, you'll love this with the Jane's Addiction, like, because I was the kid that bought like Destruction and Sodom and The Cure and the Smiths, I was that kid, and I, had the plastic front 7 inches and shit like that, and like, oh fuck, buying every Revelation record, which is, later on you find out there was tons of kids like you, but at the time you feel like you're the only, wow, I'm the only person that's, into like all these bands,
Yeah, you must have looked interesting with your record store haul in the late 80s, walking out with
yeah,
Agnostic
totally.
Front and The Cure and Jane's Addiction, all bundled up.
Yeah, right, because I was still buying the Creator records and like things like that, like still checking that out, as well as like, but like that's like Rennie and Todd were the same way, I mean? So it's like when I really started hanging with them all the time, it was the same way. Like we'd be like, yo, did you hear this? Did you hear this? Did you hear it? You know what I mean? Like, and it was always like, so he's still like totally got his ear to the ground and will send me things all the time, like a message like, yo, check this out or check this out, so that's awesome.
So then you said by the time you were in high school is when you started kind of playing shows.
Yeah, probably like about 15, 16, 50, stuff like that.
You said your music had transitioned then beyond hair metal. So what?
Oh
what
yeah,
kind of stuff?
I never was in a hair metal band. Only as like a joke. Like me and my cousin and a couple of guys from Prema as a joke, like wrote a couple like hair metal like joke songs once, and like we would just like practice them in Joe's kitchen, and we just were like messing around, like we never played a show or anything, but that was our only, and basically all we did was like take sheer terror riffs. And it's funny, I told Paul about this one time, like when Paul was at my house, I was like, I had this hair metal band and check out these riffs. So we basically just took sheer terror songs and made them like hair metal style. and we had that for like a moment, because we were super into like Degeneration and bands like that, like we really like that, and we were like, yeah, let's make a band like this. And it never went more than we'd go practice a couple songs, like write songs in the kitchen. But no, I never did a hair metal,
So then by the time you guys were playing shows, what kind of had your music transition to? What did that sound like when you were 15, 16?
That was early, that was like when I was 15 or 16. That was like so that was like crossover stuff, what I mean, like weirder like parts. And then from there, like I I did a band, and after that, it was kind of like early '90s. I guess it sounded like uh, Sam I Am-ish and
Okay.
Seaweedish, kind of like that, you know. And then from there, I got into Prema, and that was their first record. Is more, you know, they were on Equal Vision, so the first record is they were like Baby Shelter, you know. At the time, considered the first records, you know, like kind of like quicksandy. Like I know people say like the Equal Vision website used to say it sounded like Dag Nasty, but it don't really sound like Dag Nasty, but it has that kind of riffing, you know. But then the second record, the one that I was more a part of, is more like Crawl or Season to Risk or something like that, like Fugazi. Like it's more noise rock. It's more like Am Rep style or like Touch and Go style stuff, you know. Like Doug, the other guitar player, was super into bands like Crawl and Polvo and things like that, you know. And it's more like it got more like chaotic and stuff like that, you know. It's more like cacophonous than like the early stuff, and then from there is when I was no longer in Prema. That's when we started Christ, and that was kind of like, it just was like a kind of natural progression, you know. Like, so the reviews would be funny. Like if someone did like it, they kind of didn't know how to describe it, but if someone didn't like it, they always said, you could tell one of these guys was in Prema. And like, so that was always funny, you know. Like that was definitely like funny when you would read the reviews of like the Christ records. So if somebody liked it, they kind of were all over the place with it, and it was awesome. And if they didn't like it, it was just as awesome, because they always like shot on our previous bands, you know. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was clever, you know.
For sure. So you're playing guitar. We're gonna back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
You're playing guitar. Obviously, there was something about it that kept you going, right? I mean, kept you jumping from band to band.
That's all I ever wanted to do. Like in my 8th grade yearbook, when it says, "What do you want to do? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I wrote Jakey Lee. Which I'm glad I'm not him. He got shot last week or a month ago walking his dog. So I'm glad I didn't get shot walking my cat, you know. But no, that's what I wrote. So I don't know. I just always wanted to be it. And like, you know, like I always say, like people like I you know, like I'm sure you as well, right? You probably have this vast knowledge of music, right? And even though I say I don't like this classic rock stuff, I know it, you know, and I know it. I just don't listen to it. I just would never put it on, you know, but I have a knowledge of it. And like I guess like if I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, I'd have to like study fucking case law and go to school for years. So instead, I just, you know, bought hundreds of records, you know, just accumulated thousands and thousands of records, you know, which is why the transition to then opening a record store and now selling records online was just natural, you know, because it's just, and I was filming shows back then. I would go, so all the shows I would go to, I would take my camcorder and I'd either ask the band, like, yo, can I film you guys? Or I just fucking sneak it in, you know? And when I was like, I guess this was like earlier on, like 87, 88, like a lot of bands, me and my buddy from Allentown, Skip, we got this great idea to make a fanzine so that we could get bands to let us film them, you know, like, yo, we got this fanzine. You mind if we get an interview with you and then film some of the show? And they'd be like, yeah, go ahead, you know? So it was like it was a clever way to get to film the bands, you know? So I don't know. It just was like always something. I don't know. Music was just when it clicked, you know. It was like when it clicked, it was like, oh, this is it, you know, this is what's for me, you know. So that was like, and it was pretty much instantaneously, like I said, from hearing those Ozzy records, and then like within 6 months, I'm playing guitar, you know, and I'm buying every week. I'm buying 2-3 records, you know. And it's still like that, you know. Like I don't know. I mean, that I sell records for a living. I get to bring in everything that I want, you know. So it's kind of like, so I get to hear everything at this point. Plus, the internet now is just ridiculous, you know.
Oh yeah.
At this point, it's unbelievable what we have at our fingertips, you know. It's like you think about something that you can't even remember something, you know, and you're like, oh man, what the fuck was this song, or what the fuck was this band, you know, and you're like, you can't even remember, but you remember one thing, so you remember one lyric to one song, like one piece of it, you can type it in and boom, you're like, oh fuck, there it is, it's Papa-Lead itself, you know. And you're like, you know, it's like Jesus, it's like it's crazy, you know. Like if we had that when we were younger, I don't know how it would feel. maybe I wouldn't. Maybe it wouldn't have been so special. There would have been no tape, you know. Like, I mean, because with the videos, I was trading, so it was like tape trading, you know, but with live concerts, you know. And I trade people for whatever things they filmed or demos or anything that they wanted to trade for that they had to trade, you know. So a lot of it was like tape trading. It's just I was filming shows, so I had tons of like live shit, and tons of the bands from around here, you know. So I guess I don't know. I guess it would be. I don't know. It's the butterfly effect. You have no clue. You have no clue how that would have affected us differently. You know, we think it would be great, but would we have gravitated towards it or something else? You know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, at least for me, from my opinion, goes back to what you were saying before. You only have X amount of money. You buy an album because it has a cool cover or
Huh?
because some band thanked them in their liner notes for another band. And because you don't have that much money, you are more inclined to kind of force yourself to like it. So
Yeah.
I think if we had the internet, we had access to all the music all the time, I don't think that my musical tastes would have developed the
But
way that they did because
they did.
you're kind
Yeah.
of forcing yourself into that niche once you buy the album. You're like, okay, well, I just spent like for me, it was more about CDs than records,
Right.
but like I just spent $15 on the
15
CD.
bucks. I know.
I'm gonna keep listening until I like it. Like,
Yeah. No, that was there. That definitely. And then there's stuff like there's stuff that I bought then, like you know, like so I love Celtic Frost, right? So, not knowing what Surf on Ghoul sounds like, I look like Celtic Frost to me. So I buy it, and I'm like, oh god, this is like New Wave. I'm not feeling this. You know, now I like it, but back then I was like, this isn't what Celtic. This isn't. I thought it was going to sound like Celtic Frost or something, you know. And that would happen a lot. You know, you'd buy it because of the cover, because it reminded you of something else, you know. Um, yeah. My daughter, she's 12. She finds so much stuff. And then she's always like, kid, is this on record? And it'll be like some Spotify thing, or it'll be like some crazy like Bandcamp thing or demo thing, you know, like I'm like, I don't know, you know, like and if it is, we've missed the boat on it, and there was like 200 pressed like 5 years ago, and there's like no copies on Discogs or anywhere, you know. But like because she listens to a ton of music. Like she's 12, she's got that, she has that going, you know. And I've never influenced her. I've never given her anything. I refuse to be that person. Like to be like, oh, here, my kid likes exactly the same stuff as me. Nah, man, I see people that do that. I'm just like, stop, let them find their own shit, you know. They'll find cool shit. Trust me. It's like she finds tons of cool shit, you know. But like I said, most of it is like, you know, I don't know. She's definitely not. She's 12 and she's a girl, and she's definitely never liked Taylor Swift. So it's kind of it's kind of weird, and that's not my doing. That's her doing. You know, like when she was real little, like she had heard "Welcome to New York" on like a. This is like when she was 3 on a like television show, and I remember that she liked that, but that was it. You know, like she's not like she doesn't really. She finds like interesting things, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like I don't know, like lots of Japanese DJs and things like that because she cosplays. So she's out there finding stuff every day, you know, too. So I don't know, but like I said, I don't know how I would have been, but she seems to really be utilizing it properly. I don't know if I would have been like that or if I would have just like took what was force fed, you know. I don't know, or if I would have not even been interested in music, you know. The fact that I think we had to like search it out made it a lot of fun, you know. And like you said, the thanks lists, like you'd always like when you know when you buy a cassette or like a CD or a record and there's no insert or like very little, you're pissed.
oh yeah,
You know, like now I can't see like a list of bands that I want to check out. Like the big one, a really big one was that Anthrax Among the Living. Like it folded out, the cassette folded out like this much, and there was like 200 bands in there. And I just remember like my goal was to hear every one of the bands. I didn't know what they sounded like, you know, like I need to hear every one of these fucking bands, you know. And thank God my cousin was on drugs and went to rehab because that dude gave me like a pile of that stuff, you know, like.
uh, that's a unique, good thing they went to rehab kind of story right there.
Yeah, totally. You know, I mean, like I never forget. Like you know, like she comes home and she's got this boy with her, and you know, oh man, you like that SOD record, dude? You need to hear this, you know. And it was like Agnostic Front, it's just everything. Like it was like, oh shit, you know, it just gave me piles of tapes. You know what I mean? Like here's a whole bunch of tapes, you know. The Enforcer demo, shit like that. You know what I mean? Just shit that you're just like, holy shit, what's all this, you know? what's all this? Fuck, these are half the bands in the Anthrax thanks list, just pay dirt. Cro-Mags was a big one. I remember like the record store in my neighborhood that I would buy records in. They got 4 promos that they handed me the same day, and it was they would just give me their promos, like, oh, here, check these out. If you want any of these, just take them. And it was the Brood, which unbeknownst to me was the Suicidal guys at the time, like from the first Suicidal record. I think they went on to be like Uncle Slam. The Discharge record, Grave New World, which was my introduction to Discharge. After hearing so much amazing shit about Discharge, the first thing I hear is Grave New World. And I've gone back to it still. Even like a few weeks ago, I went back to it because I saw a copy at a record show and I bought it for $15, and I was like, still not good. Now I look at it in a different light. Now I'm like, this is the worst version of a joke version of Merciful Fate that you could have ever made. Like, everybody's like, oh, it's this hair metal, it's this cock rock, and I'm like, I don't know, dude, it just sounds like the worst version of Merciful Fate I think ever. That's my take on it now, even though Discharge is brilliant prior to that, but I didn't know. So for the longest time I wanted nothing to do with Discharge just because of that record. And then there was the Motorhead Orgasmatron, and there was the Cro-Mags, and out of all of them, the Cro-Mags. And then I know you had mentioned about the Hare Krishna thing. So it's like MTV one night, here's the Cro-Mags, and they mention Krishna, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like that's that, right? And it's like, yeah. And I was like, wow, these dudes are into that. I need to see what this is all about, So that's kind of how I got into that. And then when Youth of Today went that way, definitely. And then with Shelter being here, I guess I forgot about that. So Shelter lived here for a minute. So the scene here, definitely when Shelter lived here, was kind of like a little more happening, because Shelter lived here and then 108 happened here, but then they all moved away pretty quick too. You know what I mean? But they lived at the Temple out in Germantown for a little bit. And I felt like there was like good hardcore shows going on in Philadelphia for a minute, but then just as quickly they dried up, I think, for a little bit too. I forgot about that.
Interesting. Yeah, the Hare Krishna thing is very interesting because I had listened to Christ, but I had no idea that you guys were kind of a Krishna core band. And then
I mean, we were all like Krishna conscious. So I don't think there's much. I mean, we definitely don't. I mean, I don't know. Krishna core can sound like anything. I guess it just depends on if like your core values are rooted in it, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't really have a specific sound. I mean, even if you listen to Shelter and 108, they couldn't be further apart,
Oh yeah.
Shelter is like the perfect like melodic hardcore. Like, I love Shelter, you know what I mean? And 108 is complete chaotic hardcore, So it couldn't be further apart. And I love both of those bands, So I guess as long as you're if you're like, I don't know, I guess if your values are rooted in that, I guess that's the bottom line. But yeah, no, we were all Krishna conscious, so it definitely. But there's no real underlying themes other than like, well, we had beads on in our promo photos because we had beads on, and there we thanked some people and stuff, and there definitely was like some maybe like a little bit of artwork or something. But I don't think the lyrics on the Christ record are almost. I don't want to say they're nonsensical, but they just like. It was weird how we came up with lyrics. It wasn't like lyrics were like a second thought. The music was like the first thought. Like that's why there's a lot of long songs. Like with not a lot of words. That's why the words are like a whole one paragraph is all the words to the whole record.
Absolutely, yeah. We're gonna get into that pretty in depth, hopefully in the second section.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was talking to Rennie, because like kind of like we're talking about, you guys might have been all Krishna conscious, but even having both of the EPs, I did not necessarily think of you guys as a Krishna band.
As a Krishna band, yeah.
And then when the new vinyl came out, like all the stickers are like Hare Krishna, and I was like,
I think, yeah, that was. I think Chuck like definitely went with that because like, I mean, we're all still Krishna conscious, so I guess at this point it held, and it's just like, so I guess at this point it's just like, yeah, why not? I mean, we weren't distancing ourselves from it, we definitely weren't a Christian band, which we definitely got confused. A lot of people always thought that. I was just like, they had that. they had the name. We'll get into it, but the name was there, and like then by the time we had our first practice, the name was there before the members. Like that was basically it. Like Nick wanted to do a band, the other Nick wanted to do a band called Christ, and that basically that's it. The name was there. You know what I mean? So it's just like I don't know. They never really discussed why, but the name was already there. So yeah, we would get confused like for like a Christian band sometimes, and then you'd have to tell them like, and that's when you'd break them down, and you'd not break them down, but you'd be like, oh well, we're a Christian band, and then they'd be like, well, how long have you been Christian? It's just like, well, I just said Christian. It's like it just it just was a weird. It was a weird thing. It was a weird choice of names, and if I knew anything about the internet at the time, I picked three. Well, Prema was picked. Prema was existing prior, but that just means like love in Hindu. So Prema is a word that if you type it in, a million things pop up. Christ, forget it. A million things pop up. And then Memorial Day, it just as much pops up. It's just like I never was in a band that had like a. Well, maybe I was, but we don't have to talk about that. But like never in a band that had like a real like internet savvy name, like it's like it's pretty it's three generic words, and they're just all over the place. Like, like should have stuck with the Bad Luck 13 Riot Extravaganza. Only one thing pops up,
Yeah.
But with that stuff, it's hard to find, and it wasn't. It just adds more to the like, because the stuff is all really pre-internet. The internet was just starting to happen. Mm-hmm. At the time of Christ, and I'm pointing because the record's backed up behind us. Like, oh yeah, there's the record. But yeah, it just was starting to happen. Internet was just so new then.
So I'm curious now because you were talking about there wasn't much of a scene. I know we did talk about Shelter and 108 kind of settling down there for a little bit. How hard was it for you to start a band then when you're 15, 16 in high school without much of a scene? Like how do you draw in people? Because that is to this day, it's one of those things that makes me really upset because I used to go to like everybody in high school, like, come on, dude, let's start a band. And everyone's like, no, like, I don't like music like that. Like, it used to drive me insane.
So it wasn't like other places, just like it, but when you're in high school, it's different. You know what I mean? Like you play a show and like tons of people, kind of, does that make sense? Kind of, I don't know. Like it's weird. Like I'm trying to think back that far, I mean, Turning Point was around and they always packed it, like, and bands like that, but like the more outskirts, like there's more outskirts. I'm just talking right in Philly, but if those bands played in Philly, there would be people, but it was like, as far as like things in the actual city, there wasn't much going on in the actual like city, Oh
no, I mean totally. But like you're 16, right? You want to start a band. How do you find a drummer at your high school who's into the same kind of music you are, right?
That's funny. I don't know. How did our first band? Well, so me and my buddy Judah, the first band I was in, we kind of like, knew we were going to do this band, and then I don't know, in high school there was this kid that played drums. I mean, he was into like 7 seconds and stuff, so he was perfect. You know what I mean? Oh, you like 7 seconds? That's great. We love 7 seconds. So that worked out great. And it's just like find somebody to sing. Like Sal thinks he could sing, put him on vocals. But then like later on, like you just meet people from there. You know what I mean? Like it's like the band that I did after that sounded like Seaweed, like Fred Mascherino sang in. Who was in Take It Back Sunday and The Color Fred. Brody, but he's an amazing guitar player. He's way better than me and Pat ever could be, but he didn't play guitar in the band. He sang in the band. He played guitar in Brody, but he's like way better than we could ever be. I mean, there was a couple like little guitar solos on the demo that we did, and he's like, "Here, just give me the guitar," and he's like whipped them out, because me and Pat would have been there forever, just because it was kind of like, yeah, Fred, here, you just play that little guitar solo thing, and then I have to relearn it. Thanks, but yeah, no, I don't know. That's a weird question. I guess it definitely started building by like 92, 93, 94. There definitely was a scene in Philly, but like late 80s and early 90s, I don't know. There really wasn't much, like I said, like there really wasn't a lot of bands. That's why, like bands started like forming out in West Philly and stuff like that, more like, and like the earlier emo stuff like Frail and bands like that. That was like 92, 93, 94. I feel like that stuff started to come in. Prior to that, it was just like there wasn't a whole lot. Like I don't know, did you talk like you've talked to Rennie about it? I'm sure you know what I mean. Like there wasn't a whole lot of I don't know. I just feel like there wasn't a whole huge thing in Philly. Like it felt like it was more like outside of Philly. Like like I'm trying to like they would put on shows like at a Revival and like I don't know, it'd be like Token Entry would play and there'd be 20 people there or something, or something like that. Or Warzone would play, there'd be 30 people, and it's just like so there really wasn't much, like I don't know. I feel like prior to that, like the pizzazz shows, yeah, but then I guess it just died off for a minute. I don't know. Probably like from fights and shit at shows, obviously like knuckleheads at shows and things like that, killed it off a little. I don't know.
So then you're playing around. You got a few bands. How did the you joining Prema come about, right? Because you said they were
Oh
already
yeah,
established. Like, did they have a
they
falling
had
out
had
with their
one. They had
guitarist?
had a
Or-
record out, and I had known Mikey. I know Mikey because so like I told you about the filming the shows.
Yep.
So like I would put bootleg videos in a store on South Street, and and they would sell them, and I always talked to Mikey. He worked there, and we were friends, and I don't know. One day he just is like, "Yo." For months he's telling me that their guitar player is moving and they need a guitar player. I'm like, okay, and I never even asked him or brought it up, And then one day he's like, dude, he's like, your brother told me you're like a pretty killer guitar player. I was like, I guess it depends. And I was like, yo, I'm not like Steve Vai or anything, Like, dude, come on, like you know what our band kind of sounds like, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, dude, I've been telling you for months, like we need a guitar player. I was like, all right, let me hear the new stuff. Let me hear what I gotta play, like what you're doing. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, and that was it. I don't know. That's how it came about. It was that easy. It was that weird. It was just like, they needed a guitar player and I played guitar and me and him were friends, So me and him got along great. We all liked a lot of the same shit, like we're into like tons of the same bands, because we're both like kids that grew up in hardcore and things and like grew up with like hardcore and the Christian thing, and we also but we were like into so much more, like he loved like just I don't know, like lots of like like the more like noise stuff that was going on, like and the but I don't know, we liked a lot of like touch and go bands and AMRAP bands and things like that, and even like lots of major label bands that just never made it, that whole slew of major label bands that just never made it, like the good ones, I don't know like who to think of, but like I don't know, like Therapy or Paul or bands like that should have been probably on an indie and probably would have did better. There's so many of them. I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head other than them right now, but there's so many bands like that, that just really weren't made for a major, like or Season of Risk and things like that, like they would have did so much better on a little label, than on Epic, because I just don't think. I mean, I'm sure, from what I understand, bands like some of those bands did well just because, they got money and invested it properly and built their own studios and things like that, but I just feel like they'd be, and they are held in a high regard to the people that know them, but I just feel like they might, there might have been, I don't know, I feel like if they went a different route, maybe they would have been better off as a band, but I don't know. So we liked a lot of that same kind of stuff. I don't know. That's kind of how it came about, like you just kind of like, gave me a tape and I learned the stuff and that was kind of like it, like, okay.
So then before you joined Prema, I mean, your bands had played shows. Did you guys go on any big tours or was Prema
No,
kind of your first?
those bands, no, like those bands just like shows around here. You know what I mean? Like just Philly, like this area, like I don't know, Jersey, Philly, Lancaster, just that area, But that Prema, no, like right away you're thrown into like playing on like bigger shows and tours, But like I went with Rennie and them like almost everywhere,
Okay.
Even though it was only ever like New York, Boston, Albany, places like that, It wasn't like like they didn't go on tours. They would do like weekends, So but no, none of the bands before Prema ever really did much of anything, It's kind of like played like shows around, no tours. Prema was the first band where all of a sudden I'm like having to like be in the studio and make a record and go on tour, and then be on tour,
So what was that like? Just the shock of, a full US tour and
Um,
joining this band and
it
playing
was
these new
it was
songs and
well, it was like that for me, Chris, and Ryan, because it was a whole new band
okay.
at that point. So only Mikey and Doug were left from the first incarnation. So for us, yeah, it was like shell shock, I mean, because we're like, you're in Atlanta on New Year's Eve, and me and Chris go roaming around to go try to find a phone to call our moms, to say Happy New Year's, and some dude blows himself up across the street. We're outside a pizza parlor, like, oh, there's a payphone. Oh, cool, we'll get a piece of pizza and a soda. We'll make some phone calls with the dialer, the old dialers that you hold up to make the long distance phone
Yep.
calls to put the money in. Yeah, with those, we're passing the dialer back and forth, and dude's lighting fireworks, blows his hand off. Next thing you know, there's cops everywhere, and ambulances, and they come right over to us like, what the fuck are you kids doing around here? We're like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, because I'm from Philadelphia. Like, the bad neighborhoods look like bad neighborhoods. Like, it's like abandoned buildings and like boarded up buildings, and half the block is gone, and it looks, you're in a bad neighborhood. You don't have a lawn, you don't have a porch. To me, that's like, I don't know, I must be in a good neighborhood, And the cops like, what the fuck are you two doing here? And then they're like, we're like, look, we're from Philadelphia, and they knew. They're like, are you just playing that punk rock house around the corner? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, go back there. It's like, are we in a bad neighborhood? And they're like, absolutely. You're like, oh, okay. Looks like a good neighborhood. I mean, everybody's got a lawn and a porch. Like, I've got this shit in Philly. Like, so yeah, it was like shocking. Because like up until then, like I'd been like to Philadelphia, like I'd been to shows all over the place. I'd been with Rennie and them, like to Boston, New York, but it's all like stuff like that. And as far as like vacations, well, I don't know. I grew up like in a typical like Italian kind of like mob family. My vacations were like the Jersey Shore and like the casinos, and then Vegas and the casinos, because my mom's like a casino junkie, so like we'd always like get comps and everything, I mean, like I grew up like that, so like that's the vacation spots, I mean, I wasn't very like used to that. And even like I said, like even traveling with like Starkweather and stuff, it's like, we'd go like to bigger cities, you know what I mean? And we'd stay with like somebody in Boston or like Albany or whatever, and then we'd come home, or like New York, but it was like the city, it wasn't like a full like in the middle of places that like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like that I've never like experienced, So yeah, it was definitely different. And then you go from like playing on tours with like Shelter, where you're like playing to like 1,000 people a night, and then like you're out there on your own and you're playing to like 30 or 40 people a night, it's just, I don't know, it was just all over the place, I don't know, definitely. And at that same time too, we were trying to like build like a new name for the band as well, like we probably should have just changed the name, and everybody at the time they wanted to, didn't want to. I don't know, like Equal Vision kind of wanted them to keep the name because they were already kind of established. And I don't know. I don't know, probably should have, because it was like a totally new thing, but we didn't. They kept it, and I don't know. So there was a lot of like whatever, because it was like people like sometimes people would show up expecting it to sound like the first record, and then it sounds nothing like it, or we play 45 minutes and we play one song from that record, and then we play 40 minutes of music that didn't even come out yet, and people would be like, is this even the same band? Like, so that was a little weird. But for us, it was like, for me, Chris and Ryan, it really wasn't anything, because we weren't a part of that first thing, so, but it definitely would be disappointing. You could tell when you would talk to somebody and it would be disappointing, like when they'd be like, oh wow, I came all the way here from so and so, like England, see you guys for these 5 shows this weekend, and these guys played nothing that I know. Even there, I don't even know I don't even know if I learned those songs, because they said they were never doing them, like, so it was just like it definitely, you could feel the disappointment, so that was a weird one. I guess I'm one of those people that are like, yeah, like, what do you do? It's kind of like, oh man, it sucks. I could imagine if I like, I just know like when I go see things, and it's like, or would go see things and it'd be like, oh, terrible. That was not what I was thinking, So I'm sure looking back, it was kind of like, wow, yeah. So,
Yeah, I definitely remember it was I had seen Caven when they were on tour for the whatever that EP that came out before Jupiter.
Mhm.
And again, like I did not know that they had switched their music at all. So like I'm expecting Caven
Yeah.
to sound like they did the last two times I saw
Was
them.
that with Icarus Line by any chance?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so I was in a band momentarily. I just filled in called Southern Misstep.
Okay.
And we we did a tour with Ink and Dagger and Icarus Line.
Oh
But
wow.
that band had Sean Brown in it from Dag Nasty,
Okay.
and Steve that was in Memorial Day and Turning Point, and Zach Eller that was in Worlds Collide and stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I like Icarus Line. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, that
Was Burning
that's
Brides on that as well?
what?
Was it Burning Brides, Icarus Line, and Cave In?
Yeah, now that you mention, I believe that's who it was, yeah.
Yeah. So Burning Brides were from here.
Okay.
Um, Dimitri and Mel are from here. Like
Okay.
I knew them pretty well. Dimitri's an off now. I think off's done though, right now.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so
I could, yeah, Caven definitely changed, flipped script. Like,
oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
remember like people in the crowd were really upset because I don't think anybody was expecting that.
No,
And
not at
I
all.
remember they trolled the crowd because they were like, "Hey, who wants to hear an old one?" And I forget what it was. It was some like cover song. It wasn't one of their hardcore songs though. People were furious. And it's
Uh,
at the Fireside in Chicago, so it's a little tiny
okay.
stage and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Hope
yeah,
these
yeah,
guys
yeah,
don't
yeah,
get jumped." Like,
yeah, 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 yeah. Is
okay,
that still
so
open?
uh no, so it was one of those. I don't know the full story, but I think it was like the promoter and then the owner couldn't come to terms, and
Okay.
there was some infighting, and yeah, it was
I can't believe it
sad
never
day.
collapsed. Like it would be bouncy
Oh
sometimes, you
yeah,
know? Yeah. We played a festival in Canada when I was in Prema, and it was in a warehouse. And I just remember like we're set up on the floor, right? And there was a ton of people around us. Like it was like one of those kind of, like I forget who else played. There was a lot of bands that played. But I remember the floor was kind of like bouncy, and me and Chris were like, this is weird. And we're like kind of like jumping and kind of like laughing about it. And then at one point, Todd, the kid that was like tour manager, this comes up to us and he's like, okay, so the floor is caving in and they need to get everybody out of here. And they don't really want to cause a scene. So we're just going to keep playing. We're like, okay, cool. And we're like, are we going to die? Like, are we going to like die here? And then we we played like another song and they kind of were like getting people out and then that was it. And then we were like, what the fuck? But I guess like the people on the floor below, like they were looking up at the beams. I'm looking up to be like, well, I don't know why I'm looking up. It's just something I did. But the beams were like on the floor were cracking and like falling and shit. And it was like in this like I don't know if it was like an abandoned warehouse or what, but it was like like I remember there was like it's like 6 floors. We were like up there, and I don't know, but yeah, it was just like a good amount of people were there. I guess that's it too. There was probably more people in that room that had probably been there forever and it just couldn't handle it. And it was going on all day, but there was multi floors. Like there was like different floors that the festival was going on, and yeah, I remember that. Like but the fireside was kind of like that. Fireside floor was bouncy a little.
oh yeah, yeah. It was. Yeah. Honestly, I'm surprised because the first year or so that I used to go to shows almost every week, never once wore any kind of hearing protection. I'm so lucky that I'm not deaf right now
Like that.
because, yeah, it was terrible acoustics in there because, it wasn't intended to have shows. So
Yeah.
everybody's compensates by just cranking up their amps to the maximum.
And that's the thing. Like I definitely like just from years of like playing in front of an amp, you know what I mean? It's like my ears
Mhm.
definitely have suffered, because I never thought to wear earplugs. Not that I was trying to not be cool, like, oh, I'm too cool to wear them. I know some people are like that. I just didn't think about it. And I never thought about it. And now it's like, it's too late at this point. What's the point? Although if I do get like, if I go see something like My Bloody Valentine or something where I know it's just going to be a ridiculous level, then I'll put earplugs in, because it's just, I don't know. at this point, it's not even enjoyable to go see something that loud.
So you join Prema in what year? Thereabouts?
94-ish.
Okay. And then you stuck with them until they break up, or what
No,
happened with
until we did a 30-something day tour with Ink and Dagger, and none of us could take it anymore. Like, we were out on the road for like 40 days, and at that point, it was just like, none of us came back sane from that. That was that Canadian tour that I was talking about. We were like stuck in Canada for this, and we're out on the road with no new record, and we thought we'd have the new record by the time the tour, and it just kept like, I don't know, it just was grueling. And at that point, it just was like, that was it. But they went on for a little bit longer. The record came out like, I'd like to think that was like summertime, because I remember going into Canada like again, speaking of being, you're gonna love this. So speaking of being sheltered, we're going into Canada like through the middle of the country, right? And there's like water coming up on the road. So like having a house in Wildwood on the bay, I know high tide and low tide. And well, on high tide, sometimes the water comes up over, floats out into the street a little. So we're driving up this road to go where we're going, and there's water on the road. So when we get to the venue, I'll never forget, the person that put on the show is talking to us, and they ask us about it. And I go, it's crazy how high tide just comes out onto the highway here. Like high tide. Yeah. Right. Dude, that's the fucking snow from the mountains melting. Like, where do you think you are? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not on the East Coast. You know, I guess I'm nowhere near anything. Like, where do you think a high tide's coming from? Like, how do I know? Like, I'm not. I play guitar. I don't know anything about geography. I just go to these places. You know, just sit in the van and read books. You know what I mean? It's like I don't fucking know. I just thought it was crazy that there was water on the highway. And that was even crazier. It's like, wow, the snow just melts and comes down and floods the road. Like, that's even more crazy. But yeah, there you go. There's how being sheltered, you know, like, so there's that. But yeah, anyway.
So you were in Prema about a year then, probably
thereabouts? Over that, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, longer than that.
Was it disappointing then that you basically recorded the album and then went on tour before the album officially came out, and then kind of wasn't, or did you guys get back together for like the Record Release show, or
no? The other dude who I took his place, he came back.
Okay. So
we just kind of like flip flopped, and then that's when over the summer, I guess, I don't know, that's when Christ happened.
Okay.
So I was kind of like glad, you know.
Yeah.
Like I definitely had it definitely was more enjoyable in Christ, being in Christ, you know.
So how'd that band come together?
I was going to see Sam I Am. And I stopped in the tattoo shop that Aaron worked at. Aaron was a friend of mine. He played guitar and bass. He played in that band Grip that was on New Age, but then he played in Autumn. So he was in Autumn. And he'd like go on tour with Christ. I mean with Prema if he was around, you know. So he'd go on tour with us and stuff. So I walk in to see him. I just, yo, what are you doing? Nothing. He goes, yo, man, I wanted to talk to you. He goes, yo, I'm doing this band with Nick and Brandon from I Hate You. He goes, our first practice is tomorrow and we're called Christ. I go, what's it sound like? He goes, I don't know. We don't know yet. We're going to be like a metal band, I think. I was like, okay. And he goes, you want to do it? And I go, yeah, sure. And he was an apprentice at the tattoo shop, or he was like the shop boy, whatever he was. He was the kid that worked at they got everything ready. He didn't tattoo, but he did everything else, you know? And he was like, I was like, well, I'm going to the show. And I was like, he's like, well, I'm here till like 11 or 12, whatever. He's like, you want to get together afterwards? He's like, we're going to practice at 9 o'clock in the morning. Cause he had work again at noon, you know, or 8 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay. There's like a drum line outside my house. That's crazy. I wonder if it's the Elmo. There's a guy that dresses as the Elmo that walks around with a drum line. Anyway,
that's such a Philadelphia story, man.
Yeah, right. Yes, Elmo drum. Like I forget what they call him. Drumline Elmo. He's got a nickname, but it's a guy that walks around in an Elmo costume with like a whole drum line. They do a drum line thing. There it is. Anyway, he so that's how that came about. And so after the back we have pagers. I'll page you when I'm getting out of here, and then we could just meet at your house. I was like, okay. So I went to the show, and then I don't know, afterwards I was just hanging out, and I got the page, and I was like, let me go meet Aaron. I came home, and Aaron came over, and that was it. We set up a couple little amps and dicked around with a few riffs, and then went to practice the next morning and rolled in, and that was it. And I think by the end of that practice, we had a couple songs nailed down.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quick. It was really quick. Like Christ was really, it happened really fast. Like we'll get into it, but it happened fast. Like it was crazy fast how once that happened.
So then Christ, you said, I know earlier you said you guys were only around maybe a year thereabouts.
About a year. Yeah.
Okay. And then what led to the disillusion of Christ?
I don't know. Just different things. Everything. Everything and anything. Like the fact that it was building up momentum and getting big. Like I don't know. A lot of things. A lot of like weird things. You know, Aaron not wanting to be too big. Me and Brandon wanted to be as big as it could be, you know. I don't know, just a lot of things. I guess looking back on it, you know, just we all had different ideas of what we wanted out of the band, you know.
Okay.
And that was it. And then when Aaron left, we kept it going for a little bit, and then we just were like George from Autumn came in and sang, and Nick from Autumn, because Autumn had broken up, so Nick from Autumn joined and Brandon. So we had 3 Nicks in the band at one point.
Wow.
And but we never played other than practiced like that, and it just didn't feel the same. So we just kind of like, yeah, this isn't working, you know. So.
Okay, so then Christ breaks up, and then where does your musical journey bring you after that?
Where do I go from there? Well, me and Brandon didn't want it to end, so me and Brandon kept playing, and we got Steve Credello that was in No Escape and Turning Point, Girl of a couple things, and that's when we started the Memorial Day thing. And we couldn't really get a bass player. We had a bunch of different bass players, and we always had the idea to try and get Skip Candelori to sing, and it just didn't happen. So then that kind of just ceased to exist. And then me and Brandon started playing with George again in his band that he did after Autumn. He did this band called Passenger Train Proposal, and they did like a 7-inch or 2. And then those guys, the other 2 guys, Mark and Jay, they were who were in Autumn, they did it with them, but they didn't want to do it anymore. So it just became me and Brandon wound up doing that. And then at one point, me and Brandon were like, this is cool, but we like the Memorial Day stuff better. So let's try that again. So we tried it with like different people, and then it just wound up being like, well, let's just get Steve back in the band. So we just got Steve back, and then we were like, we couldn't get a bass player. We had a bunch of different bass players. Actually, Dave, who played in the Passenger Train stuff, he did it at first, and then one day I think he just stopped showing up, stopped telling him about practice, and a kid named Anthony Moore, who was awesome, and liked amazing stuff just like us. Like all 4 core people listen to the same shit, you know, which is so rare, you know, even to the point where it's like, even if we like something stupid, like, yo, did you hear that Limp Bizkit song? That one part is actually written well, you know, and we're all like afraid to admit it, but we're all like, yeah, it really is, you know, like, fuck, that's a part I wish I wrote. Just that one part, not anything else, but that one part, fuck yeah, we all wish we wrote that part, you know, like shit like that, you know what I mean? Like now that's where we're all at mentally. So Anthony doesn't play bass, Anthony plays guitar, but luckily for all of us, I had a Music Man and we had a bass rig, so it's like, yo, just pick that bass up, dude, and just play, you know. You're here at every practice because Brandon didn't drive. So he would drive Brandon, which is funny because Brandon's dad owns like an auto body shop and Brandon didn't know how to drive, which is kind of amazing, you know. So So Anthony just starts playing bass. So now it's working, you know. And then we still want to get Skip Candelori to sing. And it's just, you know, we're gonna run into them at one point. So like everywhere we went, like we had tape of the songs in our pocket, you know, like in my backpack. And Steve had one on him, like in case we happen to run into Skip somewhere, you know. And in the meantime, we had Chris, who played bass at Prema. He sang for a little bit, and he just sounded like Billy Corgan. It was cool, but it wasn't necessarily great. And then love all me and Steve running to Skip one night, just like, yo, looking to give you this tape. Okay, let me hear it. Give him the tape. Okay. Calls us a couple of days later. What did these guys say? You practice on Tuesdays? We're like, yeah. He's like, all right, I'll meet you over there. And he just walked in, and there was 5 songs on the tape, and he had words and melodies and patterns for everything. We're just like,
Wow.
This is it. This is what we were looking for. Like the minute he sang, it was just like, that's what we've been looking for. And that was it. And then we recorded that, and then we broke up. And then Reaper put it out 20 years later. Reaper was like, yo, we're gonna put this out. And we're like, okay, great. So,
and that was Memorial Day, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about after that?
After that, I don't know. After that, I did a band with I did a band with Ralph from the Mob.
Okay.
It was like more just a straightforward hardcore band.
Okay.
And like a just kind of like New York style hardcore band, like, you know, because Ralph from the Mob lived here, like that, you know, that old New York hardcore band, the Mob, like the really early one.
Yeah.
So Ralph was living in Philadelphia, and he wanted to do a band. So met my buddy who he drummed in Bad Luck, and he had that magazine Too Damn Hype and stuff. He was like, yo, I'm doing this band with Ralphie. You know, you should join. And I was like, yeah, dude, yeah, fuck yeah, let me hear it. And he put it on. And yeah, it sounded like fucking old school New York hardcore, you know, with like one of the inventors of New York hardcore. So it's like, yeah, why the fuck wouldn't I want to do this as I'm old? You know, this is great. This is the perfect thing to do. And that didn't last long either. But that was kind of fun. And then after that, not much really. You know, I did like a post rock band like later on with my buddy who I got our first band. You know, me and him, like we did our first band at fucking 12 and our last band at 40. You know, that was it. You know, and now I'm just kind of jaded.
Would you say your music days are behind you then, or I mean,
yeah, I mean, I sell music, so I'm around music every day, you know, and it's just like, and I sell music live, like on a streaming platform, and people are always like, you know, and it's just like, I don't know, I kind of like, I don't know, I have like a really weird thing with it, you know, like I mean, we'll get into it, but like, it's a crazy headspace to like write songs and like push the envelope, you know. I mean, and if I'm gonna do like I like pushing the envelope, you know, like that New York hardcore thing was fun, but that's not really like, that's like with Bad Luck. Why Bad Luck was short lived with me too, because it's like it's fun and silly, but it's like not anything that I'm like, yo, like super proud of, you know what I mean? Like, and that's just, it's just okay, you know what I mean? Like when I was playing in the band with Ralph, we were playing cool shows, you know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, we're playing with like all the New York bands, playing tons of shows with Vision, and the whole time I'm like, oh, I wish I was playing something more musical, you know? Like I wish I was playing something that wasn't just like straightforward, like New York hardcore, like the mosh parts and the great breakdown parts, and of course it's got cool breakdown parts and it's got the cool parts, but it's like, I wish I was playing something with a bunch of delay pedals and flangers and phasers and shit, you know? Like I wish I was like doing what I like to do, you know? Like it's fun just swinging around a Les Paul and just playing like hardcore riffs, but at the same time, it's like I'd rather be like, I don't know, holding a note and letting it echo for 10 minutes or something, you know. Like I'd rather be doing that. So I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. Like just yeah, I guess the playing days are definitely probably behind. Like at least playing shows. I don't know. There's acoustic guitar behind me, and I pick it up and play Smith songs or Morrissey songs once in a while or something like that, you know, or like if I'm like, oh, you know, or rework a Misfit song or something like to sound like a Smith song, you know, but that's about it.
So when you were in your prime, just because you mentioned it, talk about guitars and pedals and such. When you were in your prime, like what did your pedal board look like? That's something that always interests me because there are quite a few like hardcore bands I've seen in the day where their pedal board is like massive, and I'm always thinking like, how do you keep track of all these pedals? Which ones are on, which ones
So
are off? Like,
the post rock band was insane. It was two pedal boards because it was all effects. There was nothing. There was and it's like four. It was that was three delays. That was two wah wahs. It was like because one was cracked one way, one was another. It was a whammy. It was two phasers because they're set different. But in Prema and Christ, it was pretty simple. It was a tube screamer to like just kick up the gain on the amp a little bit to push it forward. It was a volume pedal. It was the green flanger and the white DD5, and I think that's it. That's all I had. It's just that little thing. And the tube screamer was on all the time, and I just would control everything from the guitar. Like I used the Les Paul, so I would control like with the toggle switch, and that's what the volume pedal was for. Like I controlled the volume with the volume pedal. So like on like the softer parts and stuff like that had to be done, I would use the volume pedal or and then the toggle switch. But the toggle switch a lot of times was used as a kill switch to like get the like kick, 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 like the Randy Rhoads trick. Um, like once I learned that when I was like 11, like the Randy Rhoads trick, and I've used it too much since then, like too much, like it's just like everything I do, I always have to do it in some shape or form. Just like I don't know if it's a mental thing, if it's like a homage to him, but I just always have to like get that hit something and grab that toggle switch and go, I don't know. I even had at one point I had Bernie Rico build me a guitar, and I had a kill switch button put on it.
wow.
Like he's like, yo, I said something about kill switch. I was like, dude, that's so funny because I use the toggle switch like crazy. Like I'll build you a kill switch. So you didn't have to have the two pickups set differently. You just would kill it. I guess maybe that's what like Tom Morello does. I don't know, but I definitely wasn't using it like him. I was using it like Randy Rhoads, more like, oh my God, I'm going to slap the neck on his guitar, rather than like trying to use it rhythmically. It was more chaotically. Well, so, but yeah, my pedal board was pretty simplistic for that. Yeah, it was just right. It was the phaser. I'm trying to think. It was the green, the white. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm trying to think back. It's a long time.
Oh yeah.
So it's like 30 years. Yeah, that was it. Like I said, the tube screamer was a necessity, and then the one the five the DD5. I don't know like about the ones the little pro. Oh, and an Ebo. I used an Ebo and everything. Um, and that's an interesting story too. That's because like the U2 thing, but then there's a Screaming Trees single on Sub Pop, a double single, and they use an Ebo on it, and I didn't know what it was at all. And then when I was in art school for a minute, these kids recorded a song, and they broke out an Ebo. I was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "That's it. That's what the fuck." And the kid was like, "Oh yeah, George Harrison does it." I'm like trying to tell him, "Oh, you don't understand. The guy in the Screaming Trees uses it." And he had no clue what the fuck the Screaming Trees was. I had no clue. I mean, I know who George Harrison is, obviously, but I have no clue what the fuck he's talking about. And he has no clue what the fuck I'm talking about. And I'm basically like, thanks, I need to go buy one. And I was like, that's it. But I remember that's how I figured out like that trick. Cause at first I just thought somehow it was sustaining. Like, wow, how are they getting that sustained? I realized it's something hold this magnet to it. And then I just remember they kind of became the rage around here. Like a lot of bands around here like used them afterwards because everybody would always be like, "What's that?" And I'd be like, "It's the Zebo. Like it's a fucking magnet. You just hold it to the guitar and it's forever." So people started using them, which I think was cool. Definitely.
So before I let you go for the end of this part, I think you'd be a good person to ask this question for, just because you have such a wealth of music knowledge and you sell records for a living. We've talked a lot about some of your influences.
Oh yeah.
Is there a band that you can pull out that you feel is, either overrated or a band you just can't stand for one reason or another that, you know,
Overrated, all of them.
every band ever?
Every band is overrated. Um, I don't know. um, man, that's a good question. I don't know. Um, nah, there's a lot of stuff I don't like, but it's just like, but there's a lot of stuff I like. I don't know. I thought you were going to ask me underrated, and I had a band lined up that I didn't mention because I was going to mention them in the next segment. Um, and we'll get into that. It's kind of it's definitely, you know, the band I think that like we definitely like kind of based a lot of things off of. Definitely the reason why I write long songs. But as far as underrated, overrated, all of them. Yeah, we're all overrated. I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. Led Zeppelin, things like that. Just like this generic, just anything. I don't know. Like the stuff when people like bug out over the generic stuff, it kind of confuses me. But I guess we're all not wired the same. If we're all wired the same, it'd be different. Like so that's the thing. Like who am I to like judge them and just like who are they to judge us? So it's like I don't know. There's something for everyone. So I don't know. Who's the band that you dislike that much? I'm
I,
curious.
I think it's funny that you mentioned Led Zeppelin. You're the second person to say that.
Uh-huh.
Um, for me, just because I'm not like a guitar guy, something like a Joe Satriani or like a Steve Vai,
Okay.
I always thought like not necessarily that they're overrated, but like I used to be in bands with dudes and they would just watch these videos and they would get like orgasmic just watching like these 3 minute guitar solos,
Yeah.
and it does absolutely nothing for me. Like it,
Those dudes, okay, so those two dudes that you mentioned are great examples because they're fucking stale as fuck. They are fucking everything about them is just stale as fuck. They are processed. There's not an organic tone. Everything is like through some fucking fractal or eventide, some fucking rack gear, fucking uh, EMG pickup, battery operated pickups, fucking solid state fucking heads. I'm sure, I don't know their whole getup, but I'm sure there's not one piece of organic anything. But then you take an Yngwie Malmsteen, and I know people just say, "Oh, he's the worst. He's just fucking jerking off a guitar." But no, he's not. He's got his Stratocaster, but he's got the fucking souped up fucking single coils in it that are like humbuckers. The thing probably feeds back like a motherfucker. He's got 58,000 heads on stage, and only 6 of them are on. You don't even turn them on, but he's got them lined up there for some reason. He needs them up there, but when you go see him, he's got a wall of heads, not a wall of cabinets, a wall of heads, which is ridiculous. They're like 80, 60 heads. 6 or 8 of them are on. He's only got like 4 speakers, so I'm sure they're all live. But somehow he's got 60 heads, just a wall of Marshall heads. And but his tone is unreal. He's just got this amazing thick ass tone. And there's a tour that they did with Satriani, Vai, and Malmsteen. And them dudes are playing. The two Satriani and Vai are playing. And like you said, it sounds so processed and so thin and so tinny. And then Malmsteen just comes walking out while they're playing, shirt all open, fucking gold chains everywhere. It's probably smelling like Drakkar, fucking 2 watches, fucking sunglasses on because the stage lights must be so bright. And he just starts fucking shredding. And his tone, it's like, yeah, he makes a joke out of them too, because like they've got this thin ass processed tone, and this dude just sounds like he's got 10 Marshall heads on a Les Paul. It just sounds like he's just ripping direct, and it's just like, so I hate when people give him shit because like he deserves every piece of shit, everything we throw at him though, because he's just seems like such an egomaniac and so ridiculous. So he deserves everything we throw at him. But as far as his influence on everyone's playing, at least when I was a kid, it was just monumental. He's the reason I even know what a scale is. He's the reason I've ever even learned a scale, was that dude. If not, to me, a scale was like the broken up part, and like he ain't talking about love until I heard Malmsteen. It was like, oh, this is a scale. Eddie Van Halen wrote Ain't Talking About Love off a scale. So it's like, I don't know. But yeah, but I agree with that Satriani and Bias thing. I mean, you just saw my excitement meter go up to like shit on them.
I definitely did. Yeah. And it's again, right. Like I used to get in arguments with one of my old guitarists. He was like, they're the greatest guitar players in the world. I'm like, okay, like I can't play guitar, so I can't necessarily debunk that. but I've never heard one of their songs that I actually like. Like
no, man.
being
I don't
able,
think like those are, to me, those aren't the greatest guitar players in the world. To me, like somebody that like some of the greatest guitar players in the world are people like Johnny Marr or somebody like that. You know, somebody that like has crafted these songs that are just like incredible. You know what I mean? Or like a guy like that. Not that, you know, is like a, to me is a great guitar player. You know what I mean? A guy whose knowledge of the guitar just is like, I don't know, like you watch him play and it's like flawless and it's like perfect and it's like, and he doesn't even break position and you're like, oh my God, you're playing. I'd have to, I know where all those notes are, but I'm like dancing around the fretboard like I'm lost and you're just like never broke position, you know? And it's just like kind of crazy, you know? Like to me, that's way more impressive than a Satriani or a Vai, you know? So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I did like Steve Vai on that David Lee Roth record though. I definitely would have to say like I like Eat 'Em and Smile, you know, but then it's just that was it. But that sounded like Van Halen. You know?
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I loved talking all things with you. There's just something about the getting a Philly man on to talk, and always all the best conversations and all the best stories. So
Awesome, cool.
That's another wrap this week with Nicky Fantazzi of all things Christ, Memorial Day, and Prema. Uh, Unfortunately, not really much to report as far as Nicky is concerned. Still isn't really doing anything musically. He is selling his records. There will be a link to that in case you want to jump on and watch his live record sales. And other than that, Sky Valley Records is still planning on releasing the Memorial Day collection. We don't have an ETA yet, but it is currently being remastered, so we should hopefully have something here to report at some point. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Memorial Day was one of those bands I didn't know about until had this interview with Nicky and kind of discovered them. So that was exciting. Nicky was a great guy, good episode, and we will see you back next week. So thanks for tuning in.
You'd better make room for me. I'm coming through with my